You are listening to
The Free Amigos.
Hey, I'm Casper.
I'm Mark.
And I'm Tony.
Welcome everyone to episode 9 of season 2 of the Free Amigo podcast today. So today's theme we're going to base that around is about how to develop self-belief and really talk about why we lose it during our lives as we get older, especially into sort of our middle ages, and ways how we can really assess our potential and work on that. So kick us off, Paul. How have you done that, and how have you got to where you are today in your journey in the last year or two?
Self-belief. I've always had a fair bit of self-belief. Something happened to me when I was a kid that taught me a lesson or convinced me that you can pretty much do anything if you put your mind to it. I hated school, absolutely hated it with a passion, and I always knew I would do very badly at school, and I was right. And so,
that's one lesson you did get on with.
when I left school, I had very little in the way of qualifications. All I had was an interest in photography, and I was desperate to somehow get away from the boring, as I perceived it, city that I lived in and do something a bit more interesting. So I got this idea that I wanted to be a war photographer. Anyway, one day I was sitting at home watching the telly, watching the 9 o'clock news, and there was a news report about an earthquake in Turkey. I thought, oh, do you know what, that'd be good. I'll go out and I'll help in Turkey, and that'll be something exciting. I'll do that. So I got on the train the next day. I went down to London, and I went down to the Turkish embassy and asked to talk to the ambassador. And for some reason, they let me in. And the Turkish ambassador said, "Oh, thanks very much. We can handle it."
We know what we're doing. Yeah.
I had the rest of the day to myself, and I didn't know what to do. And then I thought, I know, I'll be a war photographer, because at the time there was a lot of conflict in the Lebanon. The PLO, which was led at that time by Yasser Arafat, had split into two factions, and Yasser Arafat was being besieged in the port of Tripoli in the Lebanon, not to be confused with Libya. Anyway, so I went down to in my naivety, I thought this would be easy. I went down to the Lebanese airline and asked for a ticket. And they said, well, sorry, you can't unless you have a visa. So I went over to the Lebanese embassy, and they more or less laughed at me because I was, just a 19-year-old kid. And they said, what you need to be a proper photographer. You need qualifications. You need to be backed by a national newspaper, and you need credentials. You need at least to be a member of some officially noted body. So not to be deterred, because I had the whole day. I went, found some 2p coins. In those days, you had to find a phone box that had yellow pages that hadn't been destroyed. I went through all the yellow pages. I phoned up one national newspaper after another. They all told me to off, apart from one. The foreign editor of the Mirror thought it was amusing. He invited me over. So I went over to the Mirror and had a good old chat with him. Very interesting guy. And he gave me a letter saying that I was working for the Mirror, which was brilliant. So then I phoned up the NUJ, National Union of Journalists, and they said, well, we can give you temporary membership, which will give you a picture card, which will be like an official credentials. You can get down here with a passport photo. So I went down to the train station, got a passport photo, got back on the tube, went down to the NUJ. They gave me a laminated card, went back to the Lebanese embassy. I said, here you are. They gave me a visa. They couldn't believe it. Gave me a visa. I went back to the Lebanese airline, bought my ticket, and 2 weeks later, there I was, being led through the streets blindfold for an interview with Yasser Arafat. Yeah. And that day in London convinced me as a kid that you can do anything if you are driven enough, if you want it enough, and you have a bit of a plan, you can do anything. And that was in a day. That was in one day. All that happened. One day. And I've lived by that the rest of my life. I've sort of, that convinced me.
That is one busy day.
It was a busy day, yeah. But I mean, self-belief is so important. And it's hard to get it. I mean, it was an accident that I got it, but it is true.
But you weren't born with that? You didn't grow up around, parents with a lot of self-belief. That was something you just kind of clicked that day? Or was it something you didn't have before that?
My mother's probably one of the most negative people you ever come across. But she always, God bless her, was incredibly positive about anything we did. And my father was someone who was very, very inquisitive about the world. Anything that interested him, he would sort of pursue it and in a fairly driven way. So I suppose there were positive influences there, all right.
You took on that dogma.
I think to a certain extent, self-belief can get knocked out of you a little bit at school if you have the wrong influences. It's an opportunity to instill self-belief in kids. And I believe that the system we live by, an old industrial-based system where we are encouraged to believe that we have to pass exams and then go to university and then get a job for our entire lives in order to accrue enough money for a comfortable retirement, is not the best stimulus for getting out in the world, stepping out of your comfort zone, and taking on new challenges. And I believe that is possibly the root of one of the problems.
Yes, I agree. We always talk about the education system and how it's completely outdated. I guess that brings you up nicely onto the entrepreneur's journey, doesn't it? Because that's kind of where we have all met over the course of last year. And obviously that's what really sort of stands out for me about you in this community is the kind of success you've had. And I think relatively quickly, I've heard people saying on sort of transition to becoming an entrepreneur can take 3 to 5 years. And obviously you're having success. Is it a year you've been on that entrepreneur's path? I don't know if you were doing anything before.
Yeah, it's just over a year.
Just over a year. So that self-belief has kind of transitioned then into this journey that you're on. So I guess my question would be, learning what you did there on that early journey growing up. Did you find, what were the kind of barriers that you faced then when you started off on this kind of entrepreneur's journey? Did you find a lot more limiting beliefs coming up that you had to overcome, or were you kind of just naturally threw yourself in and had that belief from the off?
I don't think anyone really has total self-belief. And I think that we are born with a handicap in that eons ago, it was a advantageous survival strategy to be genetically predisposed to being cautious. For instance, if you will walk along the plains of the savannah, maybe being subject to being eaten by other animals or being preyed upon by other people, it paid to be cautious. You're probably more likely to survive, find a mate, and therefore pass on those genes. But that caution that prevents you being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger is not so useful these days if you just want to go camping in the Lake District for the weekend. You know what I mean, lads?
Times have moved on, haven't they?
Times have moved on, but we haven't. We have a generation time of about 25 years, so we have not physiologically been able to evolve. But our social systems have changed quite a lot in the last 20,000 years. And now we're living in a time where that negative mental bias does not do us any favors. Therefore, if we recognize that we have that, we need to take steps to reprogram our brains, if you like, which we can do. We all have this bonus feature, if you like, called neuroplasticity, which is why someone who perhaps has suffered brain damage in a car accident, for instance, can come back from that if a part of a brain that was involved required for speech, for instance, is damaged, our neuronal network has the capacity to make new connections. We can't make new nerve cells in our brains, but we can establish new connections. And that capacity is something we need to actively employ in order to mitigate the negativity that we have that prevents us from stepping outside our comfort zone and taking what we perceive to be risks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So for instance, we're all English, right? Apart from Casper. But we poo-poo stuff like that. Positive affirmations, give me a break. But actually, stuff like that, it works. It works. So I use it. I use that. I use meditation. I listen to speakers like Eckhart Tolle, Michael Singer, Joe Dispenza. I find information like that extremely useful, and it helps me to convince myself that I can achieve things that I want to achieve.
Love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. And the one thing that I find fascinating here is especially about your story, what you started off with, like you just did all of that in one day. For me as a traveler, of course, it's quite similar. Being trapped in a country without a passport, that kind of stuff. Yeah, you just have to find your way through. There's no other way than that way forward. And then the weirdest thing, of course, is that it looks like a task that is like, or a mountain, that's unclimbable, but in the end, it was actually easier than you thought. The moment when you just do the action, you get out on the other side and you go, oh, that went quick. And I love that about your mentality. If you go in there, you'll see you don't have to have problems or thinking about problems before you go on the journey. You tackle the problems the moment when you see the problems on the journey, right?
Yeah, but I do think that it helps if you have already proved to yourself that this is the case. I got loads of. I'm not that clever. I really am not that clever, but I've got a PhD from Cambridge, and the way I got it was it was a whim. I was a gardener. I'm still a gardener, but I had a desire to get a PhD from Cambridge. So I remember driving around the ring road in my work van, devising a 7-year plan, which involved going back to school in the evenings to get the A levels, and then going to the local university, which was University of East Anglia, to get a first class degree, and then getting into Cambridge and I did it. I did all that step by step because I devised a plan and I stuck to it, and I was driven.
A roadmap.
Driven, yeah.
Actually, this reminds me of a little story I was reading about the other day. Is that the tectonic plate movement? The theory of the tectonic plate movement was actually, it came from, I thought it was Cambridge. And so it was taken seriously, and it was published in the scientific journal. But then they found out it was not from a professor; it was from the gardener. And he had access to the letterheads of Cambridge, and that's how it was published, and that's how the tectonic plate movement was officially acknowledged. Sounds like your story.
Yeah, I was watching a film actually yesterday called The Dig, about the excavations of Sutton Hoo, and how that whole thing was driven initially by a guy who was labelled as an excavator, but he had no qualifications. And the snobbery and class system of Britain kind of excluded him from any sort of acknowledgement from that. And, as I say, I've been a gardener, I've worked at Cambridge, mixed with all sorts of people. I can tell you, lads, that nobody is any more intelligent than anyone else. We're all pretty much the same. I meet people every day down at the builder's yard who are every bit as intelligent as any guy at Cambridge with a Nobel Prize. There's very little difference between us. Very little.
Love that. Yeah.
I guess it's different types of intelligence, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's relativity of intelligence. The moment when you start giving out Nobel Prizes, it's kind of like you kind of make a classification of intelligence. But if you can manage to get yourself a ticket and a visa and working for a newspaper in one day, that's pretty impressive.
Practical intelligence, yeah.
I think we put too much emphasis on IQ.
Yeah.
Full stop. There's, as you say, Casper, there's many different sorts of intelligence, and we don't recognize enough emotional intelligence, for instance.
EQ.
The ability to empathize with other people is incredibly important, especially in marketing.
Good one.
Yeah, so I just gave you a brilliant segue.
Oh yes, it's all of this and what we've learned and the journey we've been on ourselves, like through the community we've all been a member of last year or so. It's how belief has been everything, isn't it? To believe that you can do it, you can see other people's results, you can see other people achieving it, and you're thinking, oh, well, they're no different to me, really. If they can do it, why can't I do it? But until sometimes, do you feel like you have to have the results first to have the belief, or do you need to have the belief to get the results?
I think you do need to get some results, and you need to take the practical steps that are necessary to get the results. But at the same time, you need to work on yourself to understand that actually getting the results isn't what's important. We're all here. There's a much bigger reason that we are here. There's a much bigger reason that we're doing what we're doing. And getting results, being successful at marketing is not important.
No.
What you lads are doing here is every bit, is everything. And it's not the results. Everyone says it's always like a cliche, but it's the struggle. It's what the struggle does for you as an individual. It's what's important. And in a way, if you got the results straight away and it came easy, well, in a way, it's not so useful to you.
Yeah.
Yes, you get the benefit.
Yeah, because where's the growth there, particularly thing? Through struggle, hardship, and learning to overcome, and sometimes it doesn't matter how many times you fail, it's how many times you get up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a tendency to want to compare, isn't there? We're always comparing each other. We get, like we say, oh, Paul.
That's human nature, isn't it?
Look at Paul, the success he's having. Look at someone else, how quickly they did it. But like Paul says there, it's an individual journey. Like there is no race to get there. It's like, as you say there, Paul, quite rightly, if it takes you 3-5 years or longer, then maybe that's even better, because it shows that you're kind of having to overcome more hurdles. You're having to evolve further as a human being. And that's exactly the way I look at the entrepreneur's journey now, is like, it's a great way to develop yourself and evolve yourself. And the rest of it really, business and marketing results, financial results, really comes secondary to that, like the development and of evolution of you as a person, which you touched on something quite deep there, which is why we are here in this human experience, to evolve when it comes down to it. And the rest of it's nice, the external stuff, the financial stuff. But that's the real gold in the journey, I think, is that self-development that you go on.
Yeah.
Amazing journey for that.
Yeah. We're all going to kick it in the end anyway.
And we leave it there. Thank you for listening to the podcast.
That's it, we're all done. Goodbye.
Good night.
I know that sounds a bit flippant, but there's a higher reason why we're here, and it ain't just to make a big hefty SFM commission.
Well, that's a good question then, Paul. Can you tell us what your why is? I know that's banded around, and it's part of the foundation of personal development and to why you're doing it. But what is actually your why? What got you started doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, I can, and it's sort of the same why that I market, but not quite, because it doesn't sound quite so good. If I'm honest, I came to live in West Cork 20 years ago, and I built a landscaping business, and it started off just me, and it grew, and gradually I needed to get people to help me. I didn't want to, because I knew I'd feel responsible. But it's grown to the point now where there's 11 of us, and then we work with lots of teams of, plant hire and carpenters and electricians, and we do massive projects now, which are all consuming time-wise. And, I'm fairly fit and got loads of energy in that, but there's more to life than spending all your time doing that. And as you get older, the lunacy of spending all your time making beautiful gardens for people. I mean, I love it. Don't get me wrong, but there's more. I am curious about, like my dad, I'm curious about life, and there's lots of other things I want to do. So what brought me to, but the problem is we live by an industrial model. We still do. And we are conditioned to think that we need to work 9 to 5 days a week, blah, 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 blah. And I needed an alternative way of earning money, which would also give me more time, and I also needed a strategy to downsize my business, because when you are responsible for people you employ, there's no doubt about it. You have to make sure they're okay. So I needed a strategy to reshape my business so I could hand it on to other people who wanted to continue with it. And I needed a way to reshape it and give myself more time. And when I got the idea of online business, being able to utilize the leverage of the internet to build an online business to get more time, I jumped at it. It was a revelation to me, absolute revelation.
Same for all of us, yeah, I think.
Yeah. It's such an attractive thing.
Yeah, and you touched on it there, the conditioning, isn't it? And that creates a lot of limiting beliefs, as we could come back to the subject of the pod. It is this like, oh, you just work your entire life 9 to 5, and then hopefully you'll have enough money by the end of it as a pension to maybe do what you want to do when you're retired, 60, 65, 70. And who knows if you even get to that point. You know what I mean? You could save your entire life, work your entire life, retire, live for 5 years, and it's over. That's what really kind of like changed it for me when I started on that journey, is thinking, I'm going to put off this traveling till I retire. And
but that's kind of a legacy that we got from the 50s, right? Where like we were still in like a post-World War industrial age, where people just literally had to work 9 to 5, and until they were 65. We still, all, I think all of us and most people that are listening are from that generation that was still growing up in the 70s or 80s, having that kind of legacy that we had to work from 9 to 5. But now the world is different.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back further than that. I think we've been stuck in this model for the last 250 years since the invention or the discovery of steam power.
Yeah,
suddenly you needed that additional part of the machine, which was the human machine. You needed the human machine. So we created a socio-economic system, if you like, that revolved around the human machine, i.e. maximizing the efficiency of that human machine, which involved 5-6 days a week and as many hours as you could comfortably get out of the human machine. It's got a bit easier, but it's still the same. Yeah, well, I think I don't know when the last spinning jenny worked, but we don't have to do that anymore.
That's a really interesting question, actually, because while you're saying this, I'm wondering who was the first person that started working 9 to 5? I mean, was it like on the farm fields or it just doesn't I don't really know how that slipped into our system as being a general rule. Well,
farmers, it would have been a lot longer than that, wouldn't it? It would have been like 6 till whatever, 5 till.
Yeah, they work sunrise to sunset. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
Maybe it was with the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, and a factory would work 24 hours a day.
Yeah, it's rise from the rise of the workplace, isn't it? In the industrial age, like you say, and mass employment, wasn't it, for local people in towns like the cotton mills, like Lancashire around there. You go around there, Birmingham, where I live, it's a huge part of the industrial revolution.
Resolution.
But that model just persisted, hasn't it? And it's just in ingrained in society, like you say.
Yeah, no, that's the case. That's the reason why I raised the topic, as in, like, it wasn't always like that. And so that means that it doesn't always have to be like that. That's my main point there. Is like, it wasn't always... It's the system that we grew up in, but it's not necessarily the system. And especially with the modern age of internet.
Yeah, well, sometimes it takes, like they did back 250 years ago, for that particular revolution, it takes now the digital revolution to then change the paradigm a bit for everyone in society, isn't it? And sort of switch up thinking, do I have to do a 9 to 5 anymore? No, I don't. There are alternatives out there. I can make income off my own back. I can be my own boss. I can do it as a side hustle, whatever you want to do. The opportunity there, you can leverage it how you want to leverage it if you want to.
Yeah.
You're willing to put in the work and the effort.
Yeah. And like this COVID, this crisis we're in, and I don't want to downplay the impact for many people. It's dreadful, but from another perspective, it's also catalyzed a movement into a digital age or acceptance of digital-based ways of working.
Absolutely agree.
And in the long term, that might actually be beneficial for a lot of people.
This is an amazing thing that you say here, and we talked about this a little bit before, is so at this moment we have riots in Russia, there was riots in Washington, and there's riots in Holland at the moment. And one of the funny things there is, like, I'm sitting on the beach having a cold beer, right? And so I'm kind of like waiting for the rest of the world to catch up with the future. This is how I see it, as in, like, we're kind of in like a time warp into the future, and it's only the people that are like not really ready for it yet. They need to go through their emotions. They go into the street and riot and all that kind of stuff until they realize that they can, instead of plundering a supermarket, you can also set up an online business. You know what I mean? It's like you can change your mindset from a negative mindset into a positive mindset. And I personally kind of sit here waiting for that to happen, so the rest of the world is caught up with the future that is inevitable to happen. And the possibilities, and seeing the possibilities of it, instead of having that negative mindset of going against government and all those kind of things. That's how I see it personally.
Yeah, I think it's almost inevitable in the next 10, 20 years that artificial intelligence will develop to the point where we see a hugely significant change in the workplace. And at that point, people will be forced to either be flexible and adaptable, or we will have what Yuval Noah Harari describes as a useless class of people, unemployable, who are unable to do anything. And that is potentially a big problem. So, whilst I'm a huge advocate of evolution rather than revolution,
absolutely,
I think the speed of change is such that we are going to need to address it fairly soon.
As in, what do you mean? What do you want to address there? What do you mean with that?
Well, it's the subject of this call, really. Our inability to step out of our comfort zone. We are not encouraged to do that because the industrial model does not require it. In fact, if anything, it requires that we don't do that.
Yeah, just step on the conveyor belt.
We're rapidly moving away from that.
Yeah.
We need to be able to circumvent that negativity. We need to be able to embrace change, become adaptable, get more used to stepping outside of our comfort zone, because jobs are not going to disappear, but they are going to change. And so adaptability is going to become a major feature.
But this is happening over time again and again and again with the Industrial Revolution. The stories, especially from the UK, when the trains came in, all the farmers were protesting against the trains. We all know, of course, the saboteur, the guys that were throwing in their wooden shoes into the weaving machines. As the Industrial Revolution was taking over the jobs. Machines were taking over the humans. And this is the same kind of thing happening now, right?
Yeah, we're averse to change. And that's that's our inbuilt negative bias. We don't like change. I mean, we will take the same route to work every day because, I don't know, I get there on time. If I go the other way, will I get there on time? I don't know. It's just in us.
Yeah, well, change can evoke fear, can't it? And back to what you're saying, it's within our DNA to not suffer fear, not want fear, not be attracted to fear. So I think change for a lot of people, it does bring that feeling of, oh Christ, what is this? The unknown, the fear in them, and then it's that fight or flight. And so, okay, no, I'm gonna back away from that. I want to feel safe. Your mind wants you to feel safe. So you resist change. I think a lot of people do, but for me, change is good. Change is always good.
I mean, evolution is change.
Yeah, it is. It is precisely that.
It's almost like resisting evolution.
It's an irresistible force.
Yeah,
which you can't do. You'll be crushed by it. Yeah,
well, you can't, is it?
And that's the thing. Like we always talk about, is the people that are thriving at this particular time are the people that are open to it. Like you could say, I know we say like people as a whole are resistant to change, but there are some people, the people that the community we're a part of, who are open to it and are readily open to kind of learning something new. I mean, that's what it's about, isn't it? It's almost like going back to scratch, going back to school and going, okay, what I knew isn't going to work in this new world that's forming around us. I need to start from scratch again. I need to learn some new tools. It is like going back to school, isn't it? And for a lot of people, they're not up for that. They would rather just try to see it out with what they're doing.
Got a question for you there, Paul, because then the thing is, if you are resisting change, if one is resisting change, that also implies that they think that they are already at the top of their mountain, whatever their ability, the top of their abilities. So accepting change is also accepting the fact that you are not the master of the universe.
I'm not sure I necessarily agree with it.
Yeah.
I think Mark put his finger on it there. I think that we resist change not because we think we've made it. I think we resist change because that little voice in our head tells us that we're okay in this status quo. We're getting by in this status quo.
Yeah.
Stick with it. Yeah. Stick with it, because change could produce a result that's even worse. So hedge your bets and just stay where you are.
Yeah. Good one.
Yeah. Whereas actually, like, it is something I've learned in a few months is if you evolution is an unstoppable force, and if you try and avoid that, then it will just completely crush you at some point. Like what I see in this period of the last year has been a profound period of change in consciousness. We talked about that in previous episodes. And the people that are struggling, I think, are those that are kind of clinging on desperately and not wanting to change. It's almost like the people that have been forced out of their jobs. It's almost like evolution saying, right, come on, this is it. If you want to be a part of this new world, you've got to step out. And I think evolution will do that. It will literally just like force you to change in the end. Take the job away or the relationship or something just to get you moving.
Yeah,
it's an irresistible force. That's the way I look at it. You either jump or it's going to push you in the end. You're going to have to move forward.
Yeah. If you don't take the jump, if you don't jump, the evolution will push you off the cliff. I fully agree on that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You don't want to wait for that.
The landing's not going to be good.
No.
One of the problems we're going to face in the next decade or so is that, if we accept that evolution is better than revolution, and you only got to look at what happened with the Arab Spring to realise that there's strong evidence for that. If our global socio-economic system is fairly stable, no matter what you might think of, ructions or the rise of strange powers in America or wherever. It's a relatively stable structure, but it's built around the industrial model. And we are going to need some fairly radical changes in that socio-economic structure. And the rate at which that changes, I think, will determine how smoothly this transition happens. And I think a lot of powerful people have a vested interest in it not changing. I'm no economist, but I have a feeling that, for instance, our current global banking system is not conducive to a digital way of living and working. And so they are going to hang on to the power that they have.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I'm talking about, the emergence of alternatives like cryptocurrency. That's not going to be popular. There'll have to be shifts in power, or they will have to control those alternative means of global economics. Not just that, at the moment in certain continents I hate to say it, but certain continents are viewed as a workforce. Mm-hmm. That's unjust. That will need to change. And the internet gives, I say this naively, but I think the internet is a gift which enables us to redress that imbalance.
Yeah.
But that will have to be embraced by the power structures that we currently live under.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this recently, didn't we? In Africa, for instance, people there were kind of a lot less well off and haven't had the opportunities we've had. But if they've got that finance, if they can get that finance together to re-educate themselves, there's no reason why they can't then, experience the same opportunities that we are all experiencing. And that was great about what you said on another recent call we had, where your wise is to try and address that balance a bit now with your own marketing.
Yeah, I mean, I do market almost exclusively to Africa and Southeast Asia because I noted what happened 20 years ago in the UK and Ireland when the EU suddenly changed and a lot of people moved to UK and Ireland from Eastern Europe, and they were not welcomed. But my God, did they work? And they were driven, and they were highly educated. And yeah, no wonder they weren't welcomed, because they had something that we had lost at the time. And they made their money, their economies improved, and they left. I see the same thing in Africa. You've got a highly educated workforce there who are driven and are tech savvy, and they are ready to move away from the poverty. But I have a feeling that is a good example of a situation that may not be embraced by power structures such as the banking system. It's an upset that may be occurring a little bit too, or potentially could occur a bit too quickly for some.
Funny thing is that you are saying now is that the capitalistic, commercialistic banking systems and political systems are afraid of change.
Yeah,
they got all the power.
Status quo it gives them the power, doesn't it? The hand.
I freely admit, very naive and very ignorant about socioeconomics. I'm more coming from the point of view of a human, looking at other human beings. And I actually don't think there are malevolent forces at work or anything like that. I just think that the system, as it stands, is not conducive to the sort of change that the digital era is pushing us towards, the sort of changes, the sort of social changes. And I wonder whether there'll be a conflict because rates of change are differential. Yeah. For instance, people may want change faster than the system can allow.
Aye, good one.
So essentially, this affiliate path that we've all been on, we're all re-educating ourselves as we're going. And certainly we talked about the affiliate path, and that for me, I think most people would agree, is a way to sort of learn the ropes as we go, isn't it? It's not necessarily the final destination. So I just wanted to sort of ask, what do you see yourself creating eventually then with these kind of new skills you're earning? You obviously had success early on, but how would you implement them to create your own kind of digital business eventually?
I am so pleased that you asked that question, Mark. Because
set you up.
It's almost, we could have rehearsed this. I mean, we didn't. I have started another business, and it's interesting. I said earlier that I was interested in photography when I was young, and for about 10 years I worked as a photographer. And I actually love photography, but I was unable to step out of my comfort zone and get involved. I got sick of tramping around the streets of London with my book because professional photography in London is very much about being the right person, saying the right things. It's a social event, or it was anyway then. And in my mind, I don't want to do anyone a disservice. I was not able to do that. I was happier as a gardener.
I love that.
But now, I've developed a new business with my son and my daughter and my daughter's partner, who's a sound engineer, and I am making videos, drone videos, and I am loving it, absolutely loving it with a passion. And it occurred to me that what was inhibiting me then, which was getting past other people in order to do my photography, I had to get past art directors. I had to get approval. I had to get commissions in order to put my work in front of people. It's the same, it would have been the same for musicians, had to get a contract signed with a record label or something. Those days are gone. Yeah. The internet gives us a chance to put our message in front of people. I can make films which I love with a passion and put music to them. And I think the whole thing works, and I think it will benefit people. And then if I use the right steps to do the SEO, the algorithms, use the keywords, the tags, all the techniques, all the skills, the digital skills that I have learned through my affiliate marketing, then I can put my message in front of the people I want to put it in front of. And that is just so fantastic.
Absolutely.
Well, that's saying the internet is that level playing field, isn't it? It's that door it's that gateway to the world at your fingertips.
It is. It's utter revelation.
You got a smartphone in your pocket. You've got the whole world in your pocket, essentially.
4.7 billion people connect to the internet. You've only got to be liked by 1 in a million. That's a pretty good audience.
Exactly. I'm holding up a smartphone, but you think the power that has in your hand, in your pocket, that everyone walks around with day in, day out, and they may not necessarily realise the power that it could bring you. And if you just learn how to market it, leverage it, and actually use it properly to your own benefit and to benefit of others.
Yeah, and that is why learning digital skills is such a useful thing, a useful tool.
Couldn't agree more, Paul. Yeah, what we've been doing just recently, Paul, is with our guests is sort of wrapping the pod up with an interesting question that we sort of posed to them. There's if you host a dinner party, which 3 or 4 guests would you invite? And they can be past, present, whatever you like, friends, family, famous. It's up to you.
Blimey.
Tell us who and why.
I got to do the cooking.
Well, no, man of your means now. You can bring in chefs, can't you?
invite Gordon Ramsay.
You've got Mark, Tony and Cass in the kitchen. We'll take care of that. We get you some nice proper wines and all that.
Exactly. We're in the kitchen.
We do a microwave meal.
No, I'll just order some Chinese.
Who's ringing on your door?
Yeah, that's it. Thanks for that. Well, I'll tell you what, we've got to have a laugh. So it's got to be some people who are up for having a laugh. That's Nietzsche's right out.
Yeah, absolutely. What a wanker.
I don't know. Let me think. I tell you what, I'm talking to this guy at the moment in Jamaica. This guy called Listen Brown, who is trying to develop his own brand of energy drink called Missile Liquid Tonic.
Rocket fuel.
That's rocket fuel. That's absolutely rocket fuel.
I would like to have a dinner party with Listen, and I would like to try the old
rocket fuel
Missile Liquid Tonic energy drink. Who else? Someone, I suppose we don't want to waste this opportunity. I would like to speak to someone fairly intelligent.
Oh, they're all in the kitchen.
Sorry. I wouldn't mind inviting Michael Singer, actually. I'd quite like to invite him.
Why is that?
Because I sort of identify with his story a bit. I like the way he spent a lot of time with himself. I spent a lot of time with myself when I was young. Self-analysis. When you're not very happy, you spend a lot of time undergoing self-analysis, but that sometimes gives you empathy. So it's not a bad thing. So we'll have on Michael. We'll have Listen, Michael. And someone else. I would like to. Obviously, it's got to be a woman to balance things out.
Balance.
Yeah. How much time? Put the clock on.
It's going to be either Marilyn Monroe or Virgin Mary. Which one of the two?
Well, I think Mary might have been throwing us a bit of a. I don't believe that, Mary. I'm sorry. But, a female comedian.
Female comedian.
Right, which one?
Because they're always good. They're usually a lot cleverer than me, and I like clever women. Does that sound patronising? Jesus. Can we start again?
Yeah. Okay. Welcome. This is podcast number 9.
Oh, it's warm in here. My wife, she's much cleverer than me. She's a good cook. That's it.
To be honest, I don't know if I'd invite many famous people. It's kind of like...
Dude, you can even invite Jesus if you want to.
Jesus.
Oh, literally Jesus. Or...
He'd have a lot of stories to tell, wouldn't he?
You remember that day I walked on water? That was quite good.
This one time in Nazareth.
Number 3. Who is it?
Number 3.
Well, you mentioned before, Paul, in our previous calls we've had about the war photographers that you admire. Would you invite someone like that?
I don't think I'd invite those morbid bastards. That's the last thing I want. Jesus.
Talk about death.
You're out. No. It's got to. You want to have a laugh. You want to have a laugh.
Yes.
I know a lot of comedians in real life are actually quite desperately unhappy.
Yeah, Robin Williams would have been one of mine, but
nice.
Yeah, we all obviously know. Yeah, I think Robin Williams is absolutely fantastic. I love that guy. He'd be number 1 on my dinner party list any day of the week.
Yeah, but it's not your party, is it?
I know. I'm just saying. It just made me think of Robin Williams. Just saying. Come on, Paul, look at the angst.
Oh, God.
If you could see the angst on Paul's face here now.
Who have we got so far?
Your Jamaican mate.
We got your Jamaican mate.
The missile rocket fuel guy.
Sort of rocket fuel, yeah.
I'm see some really nice violins behind you.
Violins, yeah.
What about Stradivarius?
No, I don't think so. Play along a little jig together. I'll tell you a little story, actually. In Westcourt, where I live, there are a lot of very, this is kind of rich person's paradise, tasteful Monte Carlo. And Jeremy Irons has a castle here.
Wow.
And I laid out the garden for a great friend of his. And it just so happens that one Christmas I was around there and Jeremy came in and he said, I'm having a party tonight and Martin Hayes is coming, right? Now, I don't know if you guys know, Martin Hayes is like very famous Irish fiddle player, violinist, really talented, beautiful. And I said to Jeremy, oh God, Martin Hayes, a real hero of mine. And he said, why don't you come? Bring your fiddle. So I thought,
and your cat.
Brilliant. Because in Ireland, you can play in the pub. It's the only place you couldn't do this in England. You can be crap, and it doesn't matter as long as you're having a good time, and you can make a half decent sound, and everyone's having a good time. That's all that matters, which is brilliant. So I thought, yeah, right, I will. I'll just sit at the back because there'll be loads of violinists there. There'll be loads of violinists. I'll just sit at the back and just sort of just join in with the odd note, because I probably won't know any of the pieces, because you don't. You go to a session, you don't know half the pieces. You just sort of, jam it along. You pick them up as you go along. Anyway, it's just me and Martin.
The duet.
It came to that point in the evening where Jeremy got his guitar out and said, right, lads, we're going to entertain everyone at the party. It was me and Martin.
Wow.
Oh my God. Luckily, though, I was that drunk. That I was under the impression that I played brilliantly. So,
It didn't matter in the end.
Yeah. So we're not going to have Stradivarius, and we're not going to have Martin Hayes either. He's a very, very kind player, by the way.
Mark and Tony, we've been spending hours in the kitchen, and we're just getting the casserole out of the oven. I would vote for Martin. What do you guys think?
Well, I will mention, I think Jo Brand's a brilliant comedian, and she's a
I know
female.
about that as well.
But she's my favourite female comedian.
Yeah, all right then. I'm not averse to asking Jo if she wouldn't mind
There you go.
coming.
We've been spending hours in the kitchen making casserole. Come on. Anyways, so we're getting to the end of the hour. Tony, hit it home the way you can.
Well, Paul, that's been absolutely fantastic, entertaining, educational. I've not laughed so much. It's been really good fun. Thank you. Always love your insights, your positivity. Just
Absolutely.
Yeah, energy. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you, Paul. It's been amazing to have you on. I hope everyone's enjoyed listening to Paul and the thoughts. We'll put some links into Paul and his businesses and his drone stuff and anything else, and maybe this missile fuel man as well, so everyone can see and find out more about that as well. But yeah, we'll wrap it up for now. Hope you've all enjoyed that. We'll be back very soon with we've got some great guests coming up. Mr. Danny Ham next week. So I hope you enjoy that, and we'll speak to you again. All right, thank you guys.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
And I'll see you next week in our dinner party, okay?
Cheers.
Cheers, Paul. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. You've been great. Cheers.
Cheers, lads.
Adios, amigos.
Adios.
You have been listening to
Free Amigos.
Hey there, hope you've really enjoyed listening or watching to the conversation today. And as promised, we have all the links to the topics discussed in the description below and also on our website.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, please feel free to hit that subscribe button or follow the link to our brand new website where you can sign up to our weekly newsletter.
Thank you for watching or listening. We hope you got something good out of it. If you've got any interesting topics you'd like us to discuss or any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And that's it. See you in the next pod. Adios.
Cheers.